Hello and welcome to the Moonshots Podcast. It's episode, wait for it, 259. I'm your co-host, Mike Parsons, and as always, I'm joined by the man himself, Mr. Mark Pearson-Freeland. Good morning, Mark.
Hey, good morning, Mike. Good morning, listeners, members, subscribers, and everybody else who's out there dialing in and checking in on the Moonshot Show today as we dive in, Mike, as you say, into show number 259, if you can believe it. Boy, we do have an action-packed one today, though, don't we?
We do. Somewhat fitting for 259 shows. Ooh. One might say, Mark, what would be a motto for us to have reached 259 shows? It would be
to keep going. And fortunately enough for you and I, as well as our listeners and members, Mike, that's exactly the topic of today's episode. This is going to be the third show on our series with Austin Kleon. And today, Mike, we're leaning into his book, Keep Going, which is all about, as we're going to figure out in today's show, the ideas of routine, the ideas of embracing maybe a bit of solitude, maybe even a bit of boredom, but ultimately maintaining your ability to keep on going with your artistic, but also productive work. I mean, what a great call to action and great topic for a show so far into the Moonshots library. Listen,
I think sustaining creativity is something that we all dream about. I'm not sure how regularly we actually achieve this. Well, I'm taking a lot of notes on this show, but in all seriousness, this 3-part series from Austin, what I love about him, first of all, he's a regular, somewhat, one might say, nerdy dude doing well, and I think that's just great. And secondly, he's taken us on a journey on how to start and find the courage to be creative and then to step in and find your own voice in creativity. And this third installment, I think, really touches upon how to sustain creativity because like so much in life, whether you're an athlete, an entrepreneur, or someone doing a project in your community, often we start out with such great hope and ambition. And then after that honeymoon period or the peak of inflated expectations, we come to a crashing halt. We get to the valley of darkness or just pain. We thought it was going to be amazing, name in headlights, and you're 6 months in and there's not much happening. Yeah. And the worst thing of all, Mark, is in these moments, we ask a terrible question, particularly when this is our life's work. We say, should I give up? Should I stop? And boy, Austin Kleon's going to tell us how to get through that because the truth is it's always going to be hard and there's always going to be self-doubt. But those that win, Mark, those that truly win in all facets are those that keep going, right?
Oh, I couldn't have said it better myself. And I think Austin will be sitting in a chair somewhere, maybe blocking out the newspaper, thinking, Mike, these guys on the Moonshot Show, they have summarized it and consolidated it perfectly.
I think he'd give us some sort of thumbs up, but lots of lessons here if you want to be creative. But here's the key secret. If you're an athlete, if you're a business person, or if you're on any big adventure, and if it's really meaningful work, there are going to be moments where you question whether you should keep going. This show is for you. So listeners, viewers, and members, I hand it over to Mark. Let's let loose this thinking from Austin Kleon. Where do you want to start?
I'm going to start, Mike, with a clip that's going to, I think, illustrate and further support exactly the sentiment that you just shared. When the times get a little bit tough, where do we lean into? So let's hear from Austin Kleon, introduce us a little bit about where and why he wrote the book. We've got him joined by Debbie Millman, who's going to help us understand that, to be honest, it might not get any easier, but that's okay.
A few years ago, I'd wake up every morning, check the headlines on my phone, and feel as if the world had gotten dumber and meaner overnight. Meanwhile, I'd been writing and making art for more than a decade, and it didn't seem to be getting any easier. Isn't it supposed to get easier? Everything got better for me when I made peace with the fact that it might not ever get easier. The world is crazy. Creative work is hard, life is short, and art is long. How's that for an opening paragraph? It's a really good book. Tell us how this book might have become a remedy for you in this experience of writing it.
Yeah, I mean, I just needed like a guide. I just felt unmoored. And let's be honest, it's the election of 2016 was a rotten year, and it really felt like we lost something. I mean, just the tone of the country shifted so horribly, and everyone I know was just distraught, and I just, particularly in my house, it was like a bomb went off, and it's a combination of having really young kids and the climate of the country, and it had been like 3 or 4 years since I had written a book, and I was just like, how do I just keep doing this? And I really had to kind of dig, and I needed a manual for myself. Because it's interesting, because all my other books were written for someone else. Newspaper Blackout, like an editor asked me, do you want to do a book? I said, yes. Steal Like an Artist was like, would you like to talk to these kids? And I was like, yes. Show Your Work was like, all these people keep asking me the same questions. I feel like I should answer them in a book, and then I'll never have to answer the questions again, which is really stupid, because if you write a book, people are going to ask you about that book forever until you die, if you're lucky. So writing a book to answer questions is not a great thing. But Keep Going, Keep Going was the first book where I was like, I need this. I need this book to exist. Like, I need this to keep me on the path.
And, I think he sets up the book so well there, Mark, and that is that we saw it crazily enough when we did the recent new book from David Goggins. His book, Never Finished, thematically is very similar to Keep Going, right? Because the premise is in both of these authors' books is that you have to embrace the idea that you need to continue. You must search out adversity in order to be growing, because what you heard from Austin then, when he hadn't written for 4 years, it's like Goggins hasn't run 100-miler for a couple of years, and he's feeling a bit wiggy, a bit out of it, a bit like something's not right, and that's called flatlining, maybe going even in reverse and losing momentum. So what often stops us from going forward is that's going to be so hard. But if you can train yourself to say, if it's going to be hard, then it's probably really meaningful. If it's complex, that means it's going to be very novel because nobody else has solved that problem. Goody for me. Let's go. Like, that's a training. That's sort of like a mindset orientation. And Carol Dweck authored that. It's a growth mindset, which is the search to continually acquire knowledge. To challenge is fine. It's just part of the journey. But I actually think because adversity trips so many of us up, that we actually need to come to the first principle of accepting life will be hard and that's okay. Stop dreaming of the desert island. Stop dreaming of winning the lottery and get on with the work you're meant to do.
I mean, that's a hard truth, isn't it? And you're right. Much like Goggins's book, Never Finished, where he he breaks down very similar story to what we just heard from Austin, who's had a break as well. And it's reminded me, Mike, of that great analogy of a plant. A plant doesn't grow without, adversity, first of all. But more importantly, if it isn't growing, it is, as you say, flatlining.
Yes.
It's just static.
Yes.
And if it's static, if you're static, if we're all static, whether that's both physically, but also, from an education or stimulation perspective, you kind of flatline. You kind of just take it easy. And I think what I'm hearing from Austin in that clip is when he really considered, right, what is it that I'm doing? How is it that I'm going to be focused? How is it that I'm going to go out and maybe create another piece of work? He needed that manual, as he calls it, the guide to getting back on track and maintaining a momentum around being able to keep on going, because it didn't really exist. And also, I don't know whether he necessarily had that motivation, right? And what I find quite interesting about this book, as well as all the books that we've done with Austin in this series is he helps us understand finding and maintaining that motivation to go out and create your work, not only because of a permission perspective, but also because when those bad times do hit, you can still find the positive and the good times within those, because it is, as we know, just part of the journey. It isn't always about the end destination, is it?
Yeah. And so if our listeners and viewers and members are like, okay, all right, Mark and Mike, so life is hard. Okay. What are some of the activities you think people can do? What would you prescribe for yourself if you're like wishing for an easier life? What do you prescribe, Dr. Mark? What do you prescribe? What should we do to get ourselves out of that futile thinking?
Yeah, that cycle of trying to, whenever I've found myself in that cycle of, this seems a little bit hard, I'm not really sure whether I'm particularly motivated. If I start to notice that my mind is going down a repetitive cycle of thoughts, and repetitive, what I mean by that is daily references. You know, I think when the good times are good, you do not obsess and repeatedly think, how might I get out of this?
That's right.
Or, wow, I'm really not happy about X, Y, or Z. Instead, you're focused, you're stimulated, you're having fun, you're being creative. Maybe you're even finding inspiration to go out for a run or exercise or whatever it might be. Instead, when I've been in moments in my life where I'm not that motivated and maybe I'm finding something a little bit challenging, my mind will repeatedly go over, and it's kind of, as we've referenced on the show before, like a coffee percolator. You know, the more the coffee beans sit in that hot water, the kind of more bitter it gets. And if I notice that I'm continually thinking like that, that's when I need to write it down. That's when I need to talk about it with someone or share it. And then I might be able to understand whether or not it's something that I need to take action on. More often than not, it's not really about the work. It's not really about the project or people. Instead, it's something else, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's maybe your life's goal is not being fulfilled, for example. What about you, Mike? What would be Dr. Mike's advice on this topic?
Well, I think what comes to mind is the activity, and our listeners and viewers and members will be familiar with this. This is something I do a lot, which is, okay, Einstein, slow to start speaking. Disney was fired for not being creative before he created the Walt Disney Company. And you know the classic list: Steve Jobs got fired, Oprah Winfrey, so on and so forth. The Beatles were told not much will come. No, not much will come of him was Einstein. And I think the Beatles were told that they have no career in the music industry.
Amazing. How funny.
Okay. They all experienced hardship, yet went on to do great things. So to me, reminding myself that when you look at successful people and their story, you will always find the hero's journey where they have to transform themselves in order to successfully exit the valley of darkness, the challenge, the abyss, right? And I find that really important. Also, to remind myself that, you know, great people experience the same situations and emotions as we do. They just choose to react differently. And then if I can get to that, then I'm like, well, how might I choose to respond? How might I choose to say, okay, great. What can I make of this, right? Because the crazy thing is, after you've experienced a great hardship, it's not that hard to go, oh, actually, that was really good because that led to a new chapter or a new thing. And so in a way, I'm kind of grateful, and I really wouldn't want it another way because maybe I wouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't have had that hardship. We can say this a lot about career situations, relationship situations, all sorts of things. So these are the sorts of things I go to remind myself of. And there's a really good technique that Goggins has, which is called a cookie jar, which is where you write down your great successes, often which are a different way of saying overcoming huge hardship. And I wrote down and I review and go back to that cookie jar on a regular basis, maybe once a month, maybe once a quarter, or when I'm feeling a bit bummed, right? And then you go, damn, like honestly, without being an idiot, I look at mine and go, far out. I've done a few things in life, that's pretty cool. And there's some power in just reminding yourself, well, I've lived in Amsterdam, I've lived in London, lived in San Francisco, now I'm in Sydney. Those were really wonderful, but they were really hard to do as well, especially when you've got a family. So you're like, oh, okay, well, if I can do that, then the current problem I'm solving is nothing, right?
Yeah, you're totally right. And I remember the penny drop moment, and one of the most important lessons I think I've learned with you and our listeners and subscribers on the show is the fact that you can choose your reactions. Totally. You can choose your emotions. You can control them. And you're right, little techniques like the cookie jar. I love that.
Yeah. I've got another technique. You know what? I think if you go to moonshots.io, there's like a members button there, isn't there, Mark?
Yeah, you know what, Mike? I think there actually is. And you know what? I'm really pleased to say there's also been a few other individuals out there who have found that button for us. So what that means, Mike, is it is definitely there. And you know what we like to do? We like to call out those individuals, those extra special people that have gone to moonshots.io, who have clicked on that member button and have become unique individuals who are supporting the Moonshots show every single week. And Mike, you know what they also get? They get a very special trumpet. So without further ado, please welcome in Bob, Ken, Dietmar, Marjan, Connor, Rodrigo, Lisa, and Sid, Mr. Bonjour, Paul, Berg, and Kalman, Joe, Christian, Samuela, and Barbara, Chris, Deborah, Lasse, Steve, Craig, Ravi, Evert, and Nicoara, Ingram, Dirk, Venkata, Marco, Jet, Roger, Steph, Raw, Nimmerlin, Diana, Christoph, Denise, Laura, and Smitty. Whoo! You guys are all over an annual membership, guys. Thank you so much for your long-term commitment. We really appreciate it. Hot on those heels and next to become our annual members include Corey, Daniela, Mike, Dan, Antonio, Zachary, Austin, Fred, Jez, Ola, Andy, Diana, Margie, Chris, Ron, and our brand new member who has navigated to moonshots.io is Fabian. Thank you, Fabian, as well as all of our members for your support for the Moonshots show.
Wow. And I bet you one thing, Mark, is that each and every one of those people that we're so grateful for their support, I bet you that they each are working on a healthy, creative goal.
Oh, you know what, Mike? I guarantee that is the case because they have all taken their time as well as their drive to come and support the Moonshot show. And that's good because you and I are also in that similar mindset. But you know who else, Mike, is in that? Creator Kevin Yee. Kevin is a great YouTuber. He's going to break down for us in this next clip a little bit more details around how we can actualize and put into operation some of the tips from Austin Kleon's book, Keep Going. So let's hear from Kevin now, break down and help us understand the value of having healthy, creative goals.
This is me at 25 years old when I was a pharmacist. At the time, I didn't really consider myself creative. All I wanted was this internet YouTube thing to work out so I could replace my 6-figure pharmacist salary. But the one obstacle I always faced was consistency. Whether it was shooting a YouTube video or writing an article, I'd go through periods where I'd go ham, burn out, stop for a while, guilt myself into not feeling good enough, and then repeat the cycle all over again. Which led me to this one question. What is the core reason behind burnout? And the answer? It's the type of goals that we set. If we want to avoid overwhelm or burnout, then we have to use our creativity to pursue the right goals. According to Keep Going, there are 2 types of goals. One, there's result-based goals, which are unhealthy. And then there's process-based goals, which are the healthy goals. What are the differences between the two? Well, let's break this down. Result-based goals. Result-based goals focus on the end product like revenue, subscribers, or views on YouTube. Some people will call them vanity metrics. This obsession with the end product pressures us to consistently churn out more work to achieve more results, which leads to burnout and shifts us further away from enjoying the actual creative process. So let's talk about the 2 things we tend to obsess when it comes to result-based goals. The first thing, money. Focusing too much on monetizing our work can actually lead to burnout. Sometimes turning a hobby or passion into an income source can turn something that was once a creative escape from everyday life into an obligation that adds stress and pressure into our lives. Now, does this mean that we can't make a living doing the work that we love? Of course not. But if we want to keep the creative juices flowing and avoid burnout altogether, we need to shift our focus away from obsessing over money as the goal. Instead, we can identify how much we need to sustain our minimum happy lifestyle and live within those means. This might mean keeping a tighter budget or really getting a day job along with our creative work. Now, let's cover the second thing, approval. Doing creative work for the clout is dangerous. When we chase vanity metrics like or shares on social media, we can start feeling upset or feeling not good enough. But if we can start caring less about approval, we can start creating work that we actually care about, which makes it easier and decreases the friction of the creative process. So if result-based goals are the source of burnout, then what is the solution? Well, we need to focus on process-based goals. Let me explain. This is Ali Abdal. Back when I took his part-time YouTuber Academy, something he said all the time was,
really try your best to enjoy the journey and not focus so much on the destination.
Rather than obsessing over the end goal, process-based goals instead focus on enjoying the process of creating and the work itself. And in turn, it eliminates the pressure of result-based goals. But there is another benefit to process-based goals. They activate our flow state, also known as our peak performance. So how do we get in this peak performance state? Keep Going suggests two different ways. Method number one, creating for yourself. This is an article I wrote about repairing my relationship with my father. And this is a video I created for myself to capture how I was feeling after losing dad just 6 months later. Days after I posted about my experience losing my father, I was getting messages about how it inspired other people to repair their relationships with their fathers, their parents, which motivated me to create more meaningful content that I actually cared about. By making creative work that we enjoy, or is just for us, it helps us enjoy the process of creation without having to worry or deal with the friction of what anyone else thinks. It doesn't matter if we publish it, store away, or even burn it and destroy it. What matters is that we actually took the time and practiced creativity and took joy in that practice.
Well, I mean, there is like probably 3 master series in that clip.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Holy smoke. Look, I'm going to ask you, like, he touched upon some big themes there. Loving the process as opposed to just being obsessed with the outcome, creating that habit, entering in that flow state, creating for yourself. Of those topics, which one grabs your attention the most? Which one really makes you sit up and take note?
Look, I love flow state. I love the episode that we've done on Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. I believe that there is this thing called flow state and that you can get into it with the right situation. But Mike, for me, the thing that stands out with that little breakdown is this idea of enjoying the journey. I think there's been so many moments in my life where I've probably been chasing that end destination. Maybe it's promotion, maybe it's money, holiday, whatever it might be, or maybe it's just the end of a project. You know, where you think, this is a bit hard. This is making me a bit uncomfortable. When will this end? And the problem with thinking like that is you don't end up enjoying any of it. You know, for the times in my life, I'll be looking at the clock and counting down, my time. And as I've got older, as I've, delved more into the business secrets of the entrepreneurs and the pharaohs, as you and I do every single week with our members and listeners, is to really savor the journey, savor those great good times, but also enjoy the challenges. Because as I remember reading once upon a time, without the bitter, the sweet ain't so sweet.
Yeah.
So if you can enjoy the journey that you go on, and you look out the window, you can see maybe it's the English countryside roaring past, maybe it's the Australian coastline, or maybe it's something that's a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit challenging, whatever that might be. When you do that, when you have that mindset and you can enjoy that journey from start to finish, boy, not only is it more fun, but you feel like you're getting more out of your life and more out of the time that you're dedicating to whatever that project is.
Yeah.
Is that a good pitch, Mike? Are you with me there? Are you with me on the journey?
Okay, so I'll tell you how I process that. Like, set like these really important objectives, and then I almost put them away because I know if I do this every day or every week, I'll get there. So I like having a goal and an objective, but I think the emphasis is, what does that look like as a daily or weekly habit? And then almost I just have figured out if I do 3 posts a week, that's what I've set as my writing target. If I know that I've set 1 episode of the Moonshots podcast a week, that's my target, then I can just relax and enjoy them. And so this is like, I think one of my big productivity secrets is to take goals and make them into daily or weekly habits that are in my Todoist app. They recur for me. Like, I am blown away by the amount of times simple little things in my diary. For example, check the bank account. Monday through Friday, I have a Todoist that says check the bank account. And the amount of times I go, oh, what a good idea. And Mark, that has been in my Todoist for, I think, for 5 years.
How funny.
Recurring. And it still surprises me.
Yeah.
That's just part of me being financially disciplined, right? Just like I have another one is to go for a walk each day. And I'm like, I get to like 7:30 and I'm like, oh, I should quickly do a walk before dinner because I forgot to have a walk today. Or maybe I ran in the morning and then I've worked all through the day. And then I'm like, and again, the transition of big objectives into daily tasks means that you can enjoy those because you're not like, I find that the stress comes from like, oh, where is this going? What's the roadmap? Am I on track or not? If you haven't broken down a big annual objective into like a daily or weekly task, then I think you end up spinning like, am I on track? I'm not sure because I haven't really worked out, am I doing enough or am I doing too little? Or like, and I think that's where daily, weekly habits make it all happen, Mark. I mean, to me, that's
I love that idea of breaking down an annual event, let's say, or maybe it's not even a goal such as the end of a project or making money or whatever it might be. For me, something like a growth mindset is, fostering a growth mindset and trying to maintain it is something that I'll try and do, annually and daily through life. And what I have in my Todoist, funnily enough, is not only every single day do something you love, but I've also got every single day do something that scares you.
Ooh.
And what I like about that is it could be anything. It could be maybe it's going for a run that I'm not really in the mood for, or it could be, oh, I got to go and have an awkward conversation with someone, or a conversation that I would normally want to try and back out of. By trying to remind myself and encourage myself, hey, it's good to do something that kind of scares you a little bit. The benefit for me is, okay, I'm going to challenge myself. I'm going to get that a little bit uncomfortable. Like Yoko would say, good. That's for me, I think, where Austin is trying to help us go with keep going. Embrace that process, embrace the journey that takes you from where you are now into something like a creative mindset or a growth mindset or whatever it is that ultimate goal or process goal is that you're trying to go out and do.
And I think undoubtedly our book of recommendation here is Atomic Habits. And Mark, tell me, is there a certain podcast and a certain website where someone might go for the back catalog on things just like Atomic Habits?
Well, fortunately, I know for a fact we could even go and ask all of our individuals who have become members of a certain podcast called Moonshots. Pop along to www.moonshots.io where you can find our massive library at this point, 259 shows full of useful entrepreneur and business secrets, such as Atomic Habits by James Clear. We've got transcripts. We've got, let's call them learning notes or cheat sheets. We've got a plethora of information out there for all of our members, but also all of our listeners. So please, if you want to continue getting inspired and you want to learn a little bit more about any of these books and authors that we're talking about on the show, pop along to moonshots.io and you can find all of our back catalog.
Now, one of the things that we mentioned in that previous clip was this idea of getting in the flow, and easily the hardest name of any author we've ever had to pronounce, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the author of Flow. And oh man, what an idea, what a book. Why I didn't discover this 30 years earlier than I did, who knows? But I know it now. And Mark, I think we got some thinking on that one.
Yes, we both, I think, adore this concept of flow, getting into it, and particularly one of the benefits, as we have found out, is being able to stay in the moment. So let's hear again from Kevin Yee, who's going to provide us yet another insight from Keep Going, this time focusing on something that we know all of our members adore, and that's about getting into habits and routines.
So now that we know that we're doing creative goals for the right reasons, how do we focus on the creative process itself? Principle number 2, staying in the moment. This is Casey Neistat when he announces break.
I need a break. I think today is my 534th day in a row where I've uploaded a video, and I've uploaded like 550 videos or something like that in those 530 something days. Like, that's crazy. And so I want to take this week off. I want to take this week, no vlogging. Hope you don't forget about me.
Sometimes we can get so lost with content creation that we forget to stay present and remember that every day is like a fresh new reset. And it's a great reminder to just take one day at a time. Staying in the moment ensures a healthy and productive creative process. But what does that actually mean? It means not thinking too much about the past or worrying about the future, focusing on new ideas and putting those ideas into our work. Keep Going has 3 methods for relieving our creative constipation. Let's get into it. Method number 1, establish a daily routine. Remember how I said every day is Groundhog Day? This is the book Daily Rituals. It breaks down the daily routines of over 150 artists in the book. Everyone from Da Vinci to Einstein, and something that they all had in common is that they all had their daily routines. Daily routines help prevent feeling overwhelmed, of thinking too far ahead, and the regret of should've, could've, would've, just like how I used to obsess over my past relationships forever alone. Daily routines do 3 things. 1, they provide order and structure to the day. The second thing is they help build focus. Third thing, they help better manage our time and energy. Plus, there's the added benefit of not having to worry about what should I be doing right now. And just because your favorite productivity guru wakes up at 5 a.m. to do cold showers doesn't mean that you have to do the same thing too. It starts with noticing where in the day we have the highest amount of energy and dedicating that time towards creative work. But staying in the moment isn't just about what you do on a given day. It's also about where you do it. Method number 2, build a bliss station. Chances are your favorite creator on YouTube, hopefully his name is Kevin, chances are your favorite creators have a specific place for the creative work. It needs to block out external distractions while stimulating creativity. First, our creative space should allow you to work undistracted so that you can actually focus on stimulating our internal creative thoughts. The last thing you want to worry about is external stimulation. Imagine going to your favorite music festival and trying to write a book there. Yeah, probably not going to happen. The second quality of your bliss station should be creative messiness. There's a beautiful art to messiness. If it's too messy, you won't be able to find what you need to do work. But if it's too organized, you can't find the creative inspiration from various unrelated things in a messy place. That's why when things get too messy and you tidy up, looking through old forgotten things can actually inspire new ideas. Method 3, slowing down. Over 500 hours of video are uploaded onto YouTube alone every single day. And that's on just one single platform. Throw in newsletters, TikTok, Instagram, and traditional books. And this information can be overwhelming. But how do we slow down? Well, there's 2 methods. Method 1, exploring the mundane. Sometimes it might mean sketching out the objects around us. Other times it might mean going for a walk outside and paying attention to what we see or experience. And this is the concept of the artist's date that is popularized in Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way, which helps us take the time to draw inspiration from the things that we probably just ignore every single day. It means spending time with ourselves when we're not stressed or busy to just get the creative juices.
So, Mike, the thing I marvel at Kevin's ability to tie together some of our favorite books. He's really got a talent. It's great. But I think, okay, what is he really saying, and what could we take out as a headline here? That in the creative routine, in the creative ritual, in the creative daily process, in that structure and rhythm is the true freedom. Mm-hmm. If you don't have routine, process, and systemization, you're leaving it to chance.
Mm.
So I know that when it's in the first half of the day with the right coffee, with the right music, do not disturb goes on. And I am telling my body, I have trained it, it's time for deep work. And we're going deep, Mike. So get ready and rock and roll. And I can tell you that if I was just hoping those moments turn up in my diary at some point during the week, before I know it, there's too many calls and this and that and travel and whatever, and it wouldn't happen at all. So unless you make a deliberate structure, you will enjoy no freedom because circumstance will jump in and intercept you all the time.
Big time. Big time. You have to protect that those moments, don't you? If you want to try, as we were talking about a minute ago, establish those daily habits and rituals, it's up to you to actually make them happen. You can't delegate that to one of your colleagues or your partner, can you? It's got to be something that you protect. And it can take a lot of time. It takes a little bit of courage and discipline, doesn't it? To really maintain that ability to stick to those habits, but also time block perhaps those moments in your day in order to go out and check the bank account and so on.
So I think the trouble that we all have with this idea is it feels like a bit like OCD or over managing things, doesn't it? I think that's our first reaction. How can we like manage creativity like the Swiss train schedule? That can't be, right? Got to leave it, let it be, right? But that's not true, is it?
No, it's not. It's not. It doesn't need to be as romantic as that. I think you're right. There's probably an assumption that I had when I was growing up, which is the individuals, such as we've heard in a couple of these clips now, like Einstein. Oh, it's a God-given thing. They were born with it. They knew exactly about science, the world when they were born. But that's not the case, as we know from the studies that we've done into all of these individuals. It takes the discipline to sit down and keep on going when the going gets tough. And for me, Mike, when the going gets tough, as we've talked about a little bit, it's putting in that structure. Mm-hmm. You've got to put in and manage the time and maintain not only the discipline, but also the insight that it is easy to get distracted. So like we know from Cal Newport, digital distractions is so inherent in a lot of the work that all of us do now, whether it's laptops, phones, watches, and so on. So having that discipline to put on the do not disturb mode, to take off the watch or whatever it is that helps you get into that mode is going to help, isn't it? It's going to help you stay present when you go out and need to go out and create the work.
Yeah, it honestly, the one thing I can tell you I know about my day is the best thinking will happen in the first half of the day. The best execution, communication, and project management coordination happens in the second half of the day. And even just understanding that that's my routine and rhythm and planning as best as I can to that helps me enjoy my work, do great work, and to be a better partner and colleague and advisor to people. So it's a huge, huge part of how I operate, and how staying in that moment is equally about creating and saying, it's crazy. I think I've mentioned this to you recently. I have reading time on Friday afternoons, which I allocate as a fixed recurring meeting in my calendar. It's a meeting with just me and my bookshelf.
Yeah. But it's funny, isn't it, how that insight and that behavior, if I'd asked you that, maybe 10 years ago, maybe longer, you would have thought, what are you talking about? I don't need to schedule in reading. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, it just comes down to maintaining the balance that keeps you inspired. Mm-hmm. Much like we heard in that last clip, you need time and space to get inspired. It isn't a switch. It isn't something that you turn on like a light. Instead, you need to have the time and the space to be inspired, like Julie Cameron says with Artist Dates, to find the time just to sit down, rest, recuperate, and allow your brain to maybe skim over things. Maybe it is, like you've caught out in the past, Mike, your books on architecture, design, and data analysis and so on are visualization tools that then help you maybe think about the bigger picture and a project in a different light. And that really is ultimately what we're trying to do. We're not trying to have a cookie cutter approach to all of the work and the projects that we do. Instead, it's trying to find the unique elements of each piece. And the only way you can do that is by finding the secret, your key, your individual key to actually staying inspired and actually, as we know from Austin, to keep on going.
Yes, it's absolutely true. And I know everyone is kind of madly figuring out what does their creative routine look like? How do they do this? Well, that one might call is reflection. And we have one last thought on that.
Big time. This is a topic that we know all of our members and subscribers adore, as do we here on the Moonshots family. So let's now, unfortunately, might bring the show to a close, this time with Austin helping us understand the value of boredom and how we need to prioritize reflection.
But I understand that you believe that boredom is making a comeback. Talk a little bit about that, why and how.
I think there's going to be boredom ranches, basically. Just like, I think there's going to be a ranch where you go and they take your phone and you're like, what are the activities today? And they're like, there are none. Welcome to the ranch.
Sounds like rehab.
Yeah, actually. Anne Helen Peterson just wrote this piece about driving around this kind of third world country and having to take buses, and how, there's no Wi-Fi signals, so she just had to listen to music on these van rides, and just how wonderful it was. Just to be bored and stare out the window and just listen to music. Just to trim the noise of the world that's the bliss station element. To have a place that you go and there's nothing to do but be with yourself. I think that's going to be, if I could invest, maybe I should buy a ranch outside Austin, the Boredom Ranch. Sign up.
That's a good
idea.
idea.
Is that URL available? Someone's going to steal it.
You quote some masters in Keep Going, and I just wanted to share one before we go to the audience questions. You quote Linda Barry, who writes, "The phone gives us a lot, but it takes away 3 key elements of discovery: loneliness, uncertainty, and boredom. Those have always been where creative ideas come from." I read that and I thought, okay, to be lonely is to be human, and that's a good thing.
And a great thing to end on.
Yes.
How fun is this? Like, go out, get bored, everyone. It'll help.
Well, it's so opposite, isn't it?
It is.
What I think a lot of us lean into when we think about being productive.
Yeah.
It isn't necessarily to be bored. What a great permission to prioritize that self-care.
Yeah. Have you ever had this feeling, Mark, when you're scrolling your podcasts or you're looking at your reading list and there's just nothing that's appealing?
Big time. Yeah.
I think a lot of us have this and still press play or still start reading rather than, and I think when we're scrolling and there's nothing, I think that's our entire being saying, I just need to process. I just need to chill. I just need to be bored for a bit and let the monkey mind ease out a bit, process, let the subconscious do its work. And I think I've just noticed how much more I'm taking those moments. And the great thing is when I do choose to read or listen to something, I am totally there with bells on because I've perhaps made it a little bit more scarce, had a little bit more quiet time.
Yeah.
Do you experience that too?
Oh, big time. Big time. There's moments in my day where I'll utilize, music on Spotify, YouTube, whatever it might be, to get myself inspired. Maybe that means inspired to go for a run, inspired to relax, or inspired just to have, a smile on my face. But you're right, whether it's podcasts, whether it's videos, whether it's music, whether I'm sitting around or going for a run, when I'm scrolling and I can't find something, I don't want to settle, that normally indicates it's time to turn it off. It's time to put the headphones away. And actually those moments when I do have, and when I tend to walk, I don't tend to listen to music because I want that peaceful time. I want maybe a little bit of time to, as we know from Julia Cameron, get inspired by nature.
Yep.
Maybe, as we know from Austin, it's time to get bored and just prioritize that moment of reflection. Similar when I'm, writing in my journal, I'll have that, in silence. I won't necessarily have music. I'm sure people do utilize music as well. But for me, I like the quiet time because there's so much going on around us all the time that is visually as well as audibly stimulating. Sometimes it's just nice to have that little bit of caveman quiet, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, Mark, look, we've covered a lot of hot topics: acceptance, healthy goals, rituals, being in the moment, reflecting. These are all the ways to sustain our efforts. Which one struck a chord with you?
I think the thing that I want to lean into more and explore is that closing thought, that idea of boredom. I love the concept of the journey and enjoying that, looking out the window and so on. But obviously you need a goal to get there. You don't just get in the car. What I like about the boredom piece is something that you can put into practice when you are considering how to go out and be productive, but also maintain a little bit of self-balance when it comes to that monkey mind trying to rule everything.
Yes.
What about you, Mike, from Austin today? What's the work that you're going to be taking away?
I have a hard time choosing because I find myself actually confronting all of these. So maybe I just have to read not only Keep Going, but all of Austin's books again and do my homework. Maybe it's like almost one of those annual book series, you come back to, right?
I think it totally could be, couldn't it?
Yeah. Well, Mark, I want to say thank you to you for show 259. And thank you to you, our listeners, our viewers, and our members, where we studied the work of Austin Kleon and his book, Keep Going. Some very good advice just in the title. But if that's not enough, he's got 4 ideas that we covered today. First of all, creative pursuits and life itself. It ain't going to get easier. So get ready for the hard ride, because it's in the hard ride that you're doing the right thing. And you can survive that with having happy, healthy, creative goals, staying in the moment, and crucially taking a pause to reflect, maybe even get a little bored, and you'll find your creative juices are flowing. You'll find that you are truly being the best version of yourself. And that's what we're all about here on the Moonshots Podcast. That's a wrap.